This is an Ice Guys Patreon exclusive.
It's time for another NHL team season preview video right here for our Ice Guys Patreon members. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith with you. And in this video, we are talking Buffalo Sabres, the team I keep saying every year, they're going to be better. This is the year. They're finally going to make the playoffs. And every year they make me look like a horse's ass. So guess what I'm doing going into this season? Not predicting the Buffalo Sabres to make the playoffs until I see it. I'm not saying they won't make it, but I'm not saying, yeah, this is going to be the time. I'm going to need to see it before I believe it. We've thought the Sabres for the last few years would be a team that would be knocking on the door, about to make the playoffs, and it's just not worked. And it's often been a good start and then just a brutal finish, good first half, bad second half type of deal. But really, they were an inconsistent, underachieving mess, the Sabres last year, really from the very beginning. Last year, they didn't get off to a great start. And you look at what this team has this year, they're really banking on, for the most part, a lot of the players that they count upon to be their core last year that kind of didn't get the job done. And now you're hoping for different results. 84 points last year for the Sabres, of course, out of the playoffs. And really, the additions they made, many of which were minor, they're like, it's like that car where the engine's not working, but you decide, yeah, we'll fix the radio. That's kind of what the Buffalo Sabres are doing here right now. It's just little tweaks and little minor adjustments here and there that they've made. I guess, namely the players they brought in, Beck Malenstein from Washington, a depth forward, a couple of depth forwards as well that they've brought in. We'll see how that goes. Jason Zucker here as well. And they did make that trade with Edmonton that I thought they gave up a lot. And I like Matt Savoy, that the player that the Edmonton Oilers got in that trade, where Buffalo gets Ryan McLeod. And look, Ryan McLeod is very capable and certainly gives them a little bit more of a depth situation at the center ice spot. He can slot in pretty nicely there behind Tage Thompson, Double T, and Dylan Cousins. But I think when you're looking at it, Ryan McLeod was also an exercise of frustration for a lot of the Oilers fans, brass, and coaches. Inconsistent. He'd have moments where he would show what he's capable of and not always have that every single game night, I'm going to get my best from Ryan McLeod. So, Buffalo paid a pretty penny to get him in here. So all I got to say is Ryan McLeod hopefully can perform for this hockey team. The good news is Ryan McLeod's got playoff experience. He was with the Oilers in the run to the Stanley Cup final last year. That could benefit a team like the Buffalo Sabres trying to make the playoffs. We'll have to see how this whole Lindy Ruff experiment goes, of course. What's old is new again. Back to the future, if you will. Lindy Ruff is the head coach. Now, look, Lindy Ruff's had his greatest success in the NHL as a coach here in Buffalo. There's no question about that. All his best years were here, pretty much. When you think of, he got them into the playoffs right away the first year, got him into the Stanley Cup final. Now, a large part of that was having one of the best goaltenders in history of the sport and the league, and the Dominator, Dominik Hasek. But still, Lindy Ruff showed what he could do from a coaching standpoint. 4 straight years into the playoffs, a couple lean years before the 2004 lockout, and then those great Sabres teams that they had built. They had a couple lean years. They built through the draft. They added a little bit in free agency, and that's when they had Jason Pominville and Chris Drury and Danny Briere and young Ryan Miller coming into his own as a goalie in the league. And they had those 2 amazing Buffalo teams that got to the conference finals 2 years ago coming out of the lockout. So he had success there. There's no question. But that was a long time ago. There was a lot of frustration Devils fans had with some of the shit Lindy did there last year. He had an axe to grind with Alexander Holtz. I've said that a bunch of times. I don't get it. But he clearly didn't like the guy or didn't think much of his play, maybe defensively or whatnot. But a skilled guy, and he didn't give him the time of day and would often staple his ass to the bench or put him on the 4th line, during a game. So, and look, Lindy's going to be working with a very young team here still. And we think of, Tage and Dylan as guys on this team, and even J.J. Peterka, Jack Quinn. These are players that have been around for a couple of years now, but they're still young. They're still very young players. So how Lindy Ruff kind of adjusts to now coaching the younger era of player, I think there's been a little bit of an adjustment for him trying to get comfortable doing that. And but at least in New Jersey, he's been through that now. A very young team, because you can't just coach these young kids. And we've said this before, Alex, you can't coach them the same way maybe you did 30 years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see how Lindy fares with this Buffalo team, which is still a relatively young team. Up front, look, Tage Thompson last year, I thought it was going to be a huge year for him, coming off the 94.47 goal season of 2022. And I think a large part of Buffalo underachieving was it was a disappointment from Tage Thompson. I'm sure Tage Thompson will tell you that it was disappointing from him last year. 29 goals, 56 points. That's a 38-point drop from what he had the previous season. So you like to hope those numbers go back up again. You've got, look, he's a talented kid. JJ Paterka, as I like to say, 28 goals last year, 50 points for the Buffalo Sabres. I like the way he played for them. I thought that, which is a good sign. He took his game to another level. They've got the veteran Alex Tuck. I really like Zach Benson, and the possibility of Zach Benson, Dylan Cousins, and Jack Quinn being a second line really intrigues me. They could be really good. Keep in mind, 30 points last year for Benson in 71 games, but the kid's not even 20 years old yet. He's not even out of his teenage years. So there's so much room for him to continue to grow. Zucker gives them a veteran presence. McLeod has been around long enough that you'd probably consider him a bit of a veteran presence. You know, Beck Malenstein and Nick Obey-Kubel, I like those additions. Sam Lafferty, you know, that fourth line. And the one thing about Sam Lafferty, he can chip in offensively every now and then. But he's a great penalty killer, great skater. You know, that's a nice asset, an attribute to have on the fourth line. I still don't mind Buffalo at all up front. The critical moments for Buffalo are defense and goaltending. It's because they have put all their eggs, Alex, in the basket of Rasmus Dahlin, I've got the power, Owen Power, Henry Jokiharju, Matthias Samuelsson, and now, of course, after acquiring him at the deadline last year from Colorado, Bo Byram. You've got your blue line tied up in this young core, which has the potential to be spectacular, but they were far from spectacular last year. Samuelsson was injured. Dahlin was very good offensively. He's still trying to continue to grow and become better defensively. I think he's taken steps, but he's not all the way there yet. And I think the one guy that you have to point to transform this blue line from kind of a disappointment to above average or good or potentially great, it's Owen Power. You do need more. I think the offensive side of his game, I think Sabres fans were expecting a little bit more than 6 goals and 27 assists in 76 games last year from him offensively. And more importantly, I think his defensive game at times kind of waned for the Buffalo State. That can't happen. He's too important, too valuable to this team. So Owen Power's got to step his game up this year, considering, you know, he was a number 1 overall pick a few years ago. Jokiharju's is a good player defensively, but he's had trouble staying on the ice for a full 82-game season. Connor Clifton, maybe is a product of that Boston Bruins system and culture, but, you know, Connor Clifton didn't really provide the punch for Buffalo that I thought he would. So that blue line collectively, they got to pick their socks up. There's no chance of them being a playoff team unless Samuelsson stays more healthy. Dahlin continues to round in his defensive game to go with the skating and the points that he puts up and quarterbacking the power play. There's zero chance of them making the playoffs if Owen Power not just plays better, he's got to play a lot better. Because you're right, it was underwhelming, I thought, from OP last year with the Buffalo Sabres. And Bo Byram's something to watch, too, because when he first joined the Sabres, Alex, he went on this crazy run. He was outstanding the first, handful of games when he arrived in Buffalo. It did kind of tail off after that later in the season, but I still like the ad. This is a guy that I'm a little surprised Colorado still traded him, but they were looking at the forward group and in other areas, and they were loaded on the blue line, so they were trading from a position of strength when they traded Byram to Buffalo. But nevertheless, I think I like Byram being on that blue line. Goaltending's key. UPL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, picked a pack of pickled peppers. What are we going to get from him this year in the blue line for the Buffalo Sabres? Devin Levi bounced around like a yo-yo last year. NHL, Rochester in the AHL, NHL with the Sabres, back in the AHL last year. It felt like they just didn't let him get like, you've either got to see that he's struggling at the NHL level, not ready, keep him in the AHL for a full season. It's okay. You don't have to rush him. You don't have to ping pong him back and forth like a tennis ball, between the NHL and the AHL. So I didn't love the management of Devin Levi last year from the goaltending position. Now, not the biggest fan of James Reimer at this stage of his career, but it's nice to have a veteran guy there. I will say that, to help the younger goalies a little bit. I don't know how much he's going to play because, look, if UPL and Devin Levi have good training camps, where does that leave James Reimer all of a sudden, in this goaltending depth chart? So very interesting to see how that goaltending, room plays out, if you will, in training camp for this Buffalo Sabres team. Last year, I said Buffalo. I think they're ready to take that step and make the playoffs. They didn't. 2 years ago, I said they're ready to make the playoffs, and they didn't. I'm not saying it this year. Totally neutral, Alex, on this Buffalo Sabres team heading into the season. I'm not betting on them over their point total. I'm not betting against them under their point total, but I am treading with caution for the first time with this Buffalo team because now it's at the point where, look, 2 years in a row, I've said they were going to improve and make the playoffs. They didn't, and really they didn't even come close. They're now at the point where show it to me, Buffalo, before I'm on board. Alex, Buffalo Sabres, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone should be a little hesitant with this Buffalo team. Just looking at, of course, early in the season, they started. We have 2 games over in Europe against New Jersey before coming back to North America. So that's always a tricky thing to kind of navigate as well. But like you said, it's a team that seems like we talk about windows closing, and we're usually talking about championship window, but it seems like their window to even possibly break this streak of getting into the playoffs has about 2 years left, doesn't it? Like if they don't get into the playoffs this year and or next season, like what do you do? Like I said, with the guys that you have, and you have 5, 6 players that are really tied into your organization, and now 7 actually with UPL's signing that 5-year deal. You have your core pieces, but you need to make that splash and get to the postseason now. Like that, it's an absolute failure if you are not a playoff team. If you're the Buffalo Sabres, you bring Ruff back, which I'm not really high on him anymore as a coach, to be honest. I just think he's one of those guys that he's had a great run, in Buffalo, but I think the game has maybe passed him up a little bit, and I said that in New Jersey. With him, and I don't think things are going to change much here in Buffalo, just because he's getting back to familiar digs. Maybe that kind of jars some memory and kind of gets things rolling in the right direction. But didn't even seem like the fans were really jazzed up to have him back as the coach either. So it just seems to be kind of a stagnant state with this Buffalo team. They have tons of talent, but they have to all put it together at once, and it doesn't seem like there's just any kind of continuity with this franchise. That's been the issue the last 10 years. You have these great stars. We talked about the teams that were rebuilding with Jack Eichel 5-6 years ago. They have these great stars in October, November, and actually see, okay, well, they have some life, and we know they're trying to build and grow. So maybe they can build from that one year where they had a good October, November, and then make it a good October, November, December, January. And then it just never happens. And then they end up making trades, they end up making moves, and then they reboot, and then they get another coach, and they just seem to be stuck in this weird loop. And I don't know what it's going to take for them to get out of it. Like I said, Tage Thompson's going to have a much better year than last year. He needs to be MVP caliber. We need to see 40, 50 goal Tage Thompson. We need to see 100, 110 point Tage Thompson. You need your whatever your goalie combination is, if it's UPL and Levi, which that seems to be the move. But keep in mind, Levi is an RFA at the end of the year. So you bring in James Reimer at 36 years of age. If he wins the job in camp and Levi gets sent to Rochester, but now you have to balance 2 things. UPL is your guy to go moving forward, your starter, but do you stick with Reimer? Do you try to make a move and maybe move Levi and try to get another younger goaltender that would be ready to play as a backup behind UPL? There's a lot of question marks with that goaltending, which is the one thing we thought would be actually solidified with Buffalo by now. We thought that Levi would kind of be the heir apparent and would emerge and be one of these top young goalies, and that UPL might be the B side. But it seems obviously giving him a 5-year deal, UPL's the A side here, and Levi's got to figure his game out sooner than later. Otherwise, he might not even be in this organization come the end of the year. So yeah, tread lightly with Buffalo. I have nothing on their futures. If I would to look at anything, it would be over the total. 88.5 is a bit low. This could easily be another season where they fall short and reach 90 or 92 points. So that's just the slightest lean I have. But other than that, I'm not looking at anything player prop wise or team prop wise as far as futures.
There are a couple futures I'm interested in. I do lean over, but I'm not touching it with the point total. I do think, look, look, if you believe in Buffalo, and I'm not saying I do, so I'm not making this bet personally, but if you do, like if you think they're going to be a lot better and Lindy Ruff is going to be the elixir that cures things and it's back to the past and he's going to bring that success he had in Buffalo 20 years ago back to Buffalo here this year, I will tell you right now, and it's not even a debate or a question in my mind, there is way more fucking value in the Jack Adams Trophy market on Lindy Ruff at around 22, 25 to 1 than there is Sheldon Keefe, who's like the favorite at plus 650. I will tell you that right now. Look, Sheldon Keefe's deserving of that price because you're talking about a team that was way out of the playoffs, a team that reloaded in the offseason, looks much better on paper, and if they make the playoffs and have a really good regular season, which Sheldon Keefe has had many of these in Toronto, you know, there's a damn good chance Sheldon's your Jack Adams winner this year. But not at that price for me. And to me, there is value with Lindy Ruff at 22, 25 to 1 if Buffalo does turn it around. And the other future I'm interested in, Alex, buy low on Tage Thompson. Now, the one concern about Tage Thompson is that he had an injury coming off a lower body injury, but he's expected to be ready for training camp. I made sure I checked into that. They do expect him to be ready for training camp. He's not going to miss regular season time based on this. And after the 47 goal, think about it. He had 38 goals in 2021, 47 goals 2 years ago. He drops all the way down to 29. His goal total for the season this year is 36.5, which means he goes over that number if he can be closer to the 38 goal man he was 3 years ago or 47 goals of 2 years ago. I think we're getting a discount on Tage Thompson's goal prop for the season right now. So over 30, that's probably the prop I'm closest to betting is Tage Thompson over 36.5 goals.
I would have the money to play for over 36 if I hadn't taken the shot with him to get over 45.5 last year. That's the way I'm kind of looking at it. I just don't know if he's going to make that jump all the way back to being a 40 goal kind of a guy. That's what I believe is needed for this team to be successful. But like you said, I'm just waiting and seeing with that. So I couldn't make a move on that this year just off of just kind of still being a tad bit salty about it last year. But with the Jack Adams note,
me too. I was on that too, but I feel like I don't want to say to hell with Tage Thompson after he way underachieved last year. See him go to 40, 45 goals this year and not be on it.
That's true. And I don't think I'm not saying that he's a cast off or anything, but I think he still has a fantastic season, and I think at some point in his career he will be a 50-goal scorer. I truly believe that. So it's not so much a knock on just that he's gone down as a player. No, it's just I'm not making that bet for this particular season. But when you mentioned with Ruff and the Jack Adams, that's the way you bet Buffalo to make the playoffs. If you're betting them to make the playoffs, if you believe this is the year, you don't bet the plus 800 for them to make the playoffs. You bet Ruff Jack Adams at plus 2,500 because he will certainly be a finalist. And then you now put yourself in a position with plus 2,500 ticket to make some maneuvers in some room. So you grabbed it, obviously you could place obviously small for the cash in to get into the playoffs, but you definitely want to have a position with Ruff to win the Jack Adams if you believe this is a playoff team, because I mean he would literally be he's the last coach to take him to the postseason, correct?
Yes.
So if you have him close the gap literally of the longest streak, one of the longest streaks in certainly franchise history, making the playoffs, then that would automatically give him one of the 3 spots, and then you can make a change and find a way to hedge out of that come June.
I think that's part of the rationale. Bring the magic back. We haven't fucking made the playoffs as a franchise since the last time Lindy was here anyway. Let's see if it can work again. Recreate the magic. That's how desperate we're getting right now.
Historically, that has not worked out. As a Hawks fan, I remember every time we brought a coach back around, it was never a good move. I've seen that with a couple other franchises too, so maybe it's different in Buffalo. We'll see.
We'll have to wait and see. They were a middle-of-the-pack team, like right around the middle of the pack in the NHL last year. Offensively, goals per game, and defensively, goals against per game. The goals, the fact they dropped so much offensively. Remember, 2 years ago when they missed the playoffs, they were scoring a bunch of goals, but they were awful defensively. And last year, their offense kind of dried up. It was very disappointing. I would expect them to score more goals, though, especially full season of Byram and his puck moving and his ability offensively from the blue line. I'd expect them to improve offensively. I'm not so sure about defensively yet with this blue line. And let's see with UPL, Levi, and Reimer. that trio. What they
Definitely
can
an
deliver.
over team. Lots of
I still
overs.
think so. I still think so this year as well. Great stuff. That's the Buffalo Sabres team preview video right here on another Ice Guys Patreon exclusive.